Welcome to the Classical Commons Podcast, a conversation exploring the ideas, people, and trends in classical education. I'm Rob Jackson, founder of this digital platform, connecting classical school communities to talent and resources. But today, I am very happy to have two guests, two colleagues from Hillsdale College with us, both professors, both scholars. Dr. Daniel Coupland is a professor and the dean of the Graduate School of Education at Hillsdale. And Dr. Benjamin Beier is professor and chairman of the education department. So we have two accomplished administrators as well as teachers. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, knowing both of them, they're devoted to a lifelong study and propagation of the liberal arts, especially as teachers. They're both widely respected for this, so I am so happy to have them with us. Welcome, Dan and Ben.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Now, both of you have studied and taught languages and rhetoric, in your case, Ben. So you know the value of the trivial arts and the mastery of expression and thought. In your post-secondary studies, I really want to hear from both of you on this. I want to know what truly captured your imagination. What kind of drove you deeper into your subject matter, into your discipline? Can we start with you, Ben?
Certainly. Thanks, Rob. It's great to be here. Really excited to have this conversation. It's a good question, and I mean, I think kind of maybe a silly but still serious first answer is, well, it was the teacher, of course, right? I mean, it could have been underwater basket weaving, but I could, enumerate those 5 or 6 teachers who just helped me see the significance of what was really there, whether it was something subject matter wise that I was interested in or not. But then that said, I eventually found my way into studies in English literature and especially into the English Renaissance. And I loved the playfulness of those books. They even talked about what they were doing as serious play. And so there's kind of a winsome, wonderful quality, an easy entry. It's beautiful, it's funny, it's fun, but trying to grapple with deep verities and really try to get at things. So that was part of my story.
I love this notion of a serious playfulness. Now, was there a particular instructor, or for that matter, a particular text that an instructor presented you that just enamored, right? Like, wow, I never saw that coming.
No, that's a great question. I mean, so in the first place, it was a course that was kind of a survey of the English Renaissance. But I mean, definitely, two figures who just popped and have stayed with me there are Thomas More and Shakespeare. Just these puzzles, these weird texts, these laugh out loud moments, and then there's so many riches going on there.
Yeah. Well, Dan, tell us a little bit more about what brought you into teaching.
Yeah. Well, so in terms of languages, mine might be a little bit more basic. Is just as a kid, I wouldn't shut up, and so I think it was just an amazing discovery as I was in my undergraduate experience trying to figure out where I wanted to put my time and my energy. I discovered that you could actually study language and learn about it. And have a love for it, and then even get paid to do it, which I think was just amazing to me. And the more you study language, as I know both of you have, the more you study it, the more you realize just how rich and how deep and how truly wonderful it is. And I just kept on digging and digging and digging. And what led me into education and want to teach it is I wanted to be around others who enjoyed language and wanted to show others just the richness and the depth of language. So I kind of stumbled into it that way, and I've never left it. So
now, you taught Spanish in high school at the beginning. Was there a particular text? We're all about the texts in this business of classical. So, was it something in, I don't know, Cervantes? What really had you by the lapel?
Yeah. So it would be great if I could point to Cervantes or El Cid or something like
Gotcha.
that. But it was, I actually, I grew up, as a missionary kid overseas.
Mm-hmm.
And so my first exploration into Spanish was playing on a basketball team, which is not necessarily the kind of language that you you want to remain in. And I'm happy to say that I moved on from that. But yeah, but my entry into Spanish was on a basketball court, and I just playing, with the local kids. And so
Sure.
at that time, again, I spoke my native language, but just the idea of being able to communicate ideas, some better than others, but using language, I was just captivated, by the sound of it, by the shape of it. That's what really brought me into language study.
Yeah. I love it. And probably being in country, as it were, right? Being in a Spanish speaking country and just being immersed, you got so much more of a visceral encounter with that capacity. Indeed. And being bilingual, right? Being able to do both just would have widened your horizons, to be sure. You mentioned, Dan, that's kind of what that's what led you to teaching, because you thought, if I can do this and get paid for it, hey, all the better. Makes sense. Ben, what prompted you to consider teaching as vocation?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think Dan stole my first point, which would be love of the sound of my own voice. I think any teacher, any radio personality, right, just has to have a little bit of that, perhaps. But I mean, for me, I was an undergraduate and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and I knew that I wanted to serve. I wanted to radiate something bigger than myself, and it took me a while to kind of figure that out. I had to stop in seminary and a few different things, but eventually I found that the classroom was the place where I could do that. And something that's always stuck with me, which is, if it's not a cliche, it's awfully close to one, but I think it was really helpful. I mean, the fact that I still remember it is notable. Was somebody spoke to me about, the intersection of the world's greatest needs and your greatest desires is where you ought to be. And so I certainly think we need teachers today. I mean, perennially, but in a special way today. Yeah. And I found that I had some desire and talent in that venue.
Yeah. I have to tell you, gentlemen, recently I saw a picture of your campus and was stunned. I really was. Now this, I was able to pull up off the internet from, your college newspaper, the Collegian, but I love the quad of Hillsdale College, which by my memory a few years ago was just lovely with grass, walkable. It doesn't look a thing like it. Look at this picture. I can't quite blow it up enough, but the whole quad has been overtaken, apparently in service to classical education. Do you gentlemen want to tell me a little more about what's going on up there in terms of, the buildings? What's happening?
Yeah. Well, so we love our grass, and
there's a lot more of that in Michigan. You can find plenty of it. I get it.
Right. And on a day like today, where we've got the mid 70s, it's absolutely gorgeous outside. You'll see students outside reading, talking, playing frisbee, and all of that kind of a thing. And it is hard to lose that north quad, is what we call it, which was just absolutely beautiful. I'm glad to say, that the college is trying to expand other areas beyond, the North Quad to reclaim, some of that green. But it is, to be serious for a moment, it is quite a statement that on the central point of our campus. So in the, in that image you put up, to the left is our central hall, which is kind of the symbol of of our college.
Right.
If you know Hillsdale, you know the clock tower, and on the opposite side, on the right side of that photo, is Christ Chapel, this beautiful chapel, which is a real statement of our faith and our commitment to our Christian our Christian heritage. And yet in between there, in between, Central Hall and Christ Chapel, the college has decided to put a beautiful brand new building solely dedicated to classical education. It is called the Diana Davis Spencer Graduate School of Classical Education, and opposite that is the college library. And so that's quite a statement for a place like Hillsdale to say that one of the sides of this quad is going to be about classical education. Yeah. So we hate to lose the green and the beautiful grass. I'm happy to report that that they are going to put grass in between all of those. It might not be as large as it once was, but it will be equally beautiful.
Yeah. Well, and I point this out because in part it's an indication of the growth and the expansion of classical education. And I think Hillsdale's always been there. It's a liberal arts college. It's committed to that core. But to have that statement, as you put it, that architectural statement that, well, now we're actually going to double down on something we've always been committed to in order to advance what's happening even across the country. Yeah. I'd really be interested on both your takes. Ben, let's start with you. You've been doing this for a while. So as you look at classical schooling, what surprised you most? Give me some of the unexpected developments. I didn't expect that building. I'll tell you that right now, but there it is. What are some of the things, really, seriously, that this growing field has revealed that you just didn't see coming? But there it is.
Yeah. I mean, in the very first place, just to take a word out of your question, growing or growth. I was, in the aughts, kind of, pursuing my own studies and interested in liberal education. And it was, well, maybe there might be this opportunity to teach at a classical school, but would there be one around or nearby, or would it be solvent? Sure. And now just looking, 15, 20 years after that, just the explosion. And we see that, not just with markers outside of Hillsdale, but even just, as chair of the undergraduate education program here, just the number of students we have who want to get the classical education minor, who wish to teach. I just never saw the growth and the speed of the growth that we've had.
Yeah. How about you, Dan? You've even got a few more years than Ben under your belt.
Yeah.
What have you seen that's been surprising?
Yeah. So it's hard to ignore what Ben just talked about. Is just this insatiable hunger that once people learn about classical education, it's all about yes, more, please. And in order to do that, you need people. You need people who have been shaped and ordered by classical education, themselves. And as all three of us know, there are lots of people who are coming into education and believe in classical education who have not had that formation of themselves. So there's just a hunger for it. And we see it at every level. We see it with parents, we see it with future teachers, we see it with current teachers, moving from other forms of schooling and other forms of education into classical education. But the thing that we are constantly faced with is leadership. Is that with this recovery and with this rapid expansion, you need all of these resources, curricula, you need teachers, you need all of this. Yeah. But if you don't have a good leader in place, the effort is almost doomed. And so that just even in the last 3 to 4 years has been the number one thing that we have been trying to address is how are we going to provide leadership for classical education going forward? Leadership at the school level, leadership at the policy level, leadership at the resource level, the professional development. We're just inundated with requests, and it's good that we operate within a community like you, with you and others who are equally committed to this task. And even if and I know that a lot of us are operating at full capacity now with ideas of expanding, we still can't meet the need.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
there's such incredible opportunity to do great work out there within the field of classical education.
Boy, that is so true. And yeah, as you were talking about the teachers needed, and obviously the leaders, you just hit it spot on. We read a report here just last month from our colleague Robert Pondischio over at the American Enterprise Institute, describing the Achilles heel of classical ed, right? Namely, you need talent, right? The growth, the explosive growth, as you put it, Ben, has to be accompanied by a supply side. We need the supply of teachers. It's so important to have the Hillsdale colleges of the world producing that next generation of teachers. But even if every one of your graduates, right, went out and committed to teaching, it's still not enough, right? Part of our job at Classical Commons is try to find more. And I'm just interested in whether you think that at the college level, right, we think of college and institutions of higher education as really focusing on an area, on a subject area, and providing greater scholarship, greater understanding, right, by expositing, by providing the kind of research to support it. I'm wondering if you see in this explosive growth any kind of room here for research to help us understand better what makes for these schools healthy, what makes these communities grow, and how to support them so that they're sustainable. I'm really interested, as I know you all are, in making sure that we both address the growth, but intend to see it sustained over time. So it's sort of my long-winded preamble to this question of, I wonder how the ed programs at Hillsdale are really thinking about equipping the next generation, recognizing, yeah, everybody's excited about this right now, but we have to do this well, right? We have to do this thoughtfully, with excellence, right? We have to build now and create foundations that will stand the test. Any thoughts on this generally, like how you're preparing the next generation of teachers and leaders to think long term, to think 20 and 30 years out, and not just, okay, I've got to get a school up tomorrow,
I can jump in and begin, but I might just pull on a couple threads of many that you put out there. I mean, we're all saying that there's a lot more to do, but I guess I would just almost I wish to begin just with a certain excitement or gratitude that in fact we do see the development of some of these institutional pillars, like higher ed institutions invested in classical ed, like the founding of a classical ed journal, the growth of certain publishers, that there are some of these institutions that I think can help make classical ed be that which has depth, not just breadth, and has staying power across time. So I'm already encouraged by that, even while there's so much more to do.
Sure.
And then, I mean, just the other thing that struck me in your presentation is, yes, I hope in higher education that we can get people who are doing some of the kinds of research that you were describing. That's invaluable to practitioners to have some of this. I don't mean this in a derogatory way, but this social scientific kind of information. But I think equally important is some of the scholarship that might happen in higher ed that's related to or for classical ed, that's more theoretical, more abstruse, something along those lines. Because, right, when you've got to keep the doors open, or when you've got to say something to 11th graders tomorrow, or even 10 minutes from now, there's just always this kind of motion forward that I think needs also to have sort of deep roots from which to go forward. And so that's not just going to happen in some of the more social scientific things, but just further recurrence to what is classical education, and what have we thought it is, what is it, theoretically, ahistorically, but what is its history? I think there's a lot that we need to do in many different spheres of scholarship to create a full support that can help this great growth also have great depth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's right. From the very beginning of our effort in a graduate education in the field of classical education, we were explicit that this is a unique graduate program, not just our program, but the idea of a graduate program in classical education in this regard. That many graduate programs, you come away and you participate in the ivory tower, removed, and there's something important about that. That needs to take place out of the hustle and bustle of everyday life, to remove yourself, to think deeply. But at the same time, the work that we want our graduates to do, and the work that others want from our students, is a very practical work. There are students in classrooms every day needing a quality education. So we kind of straddle these two worlds of both the immediate, the practical, the necessary of the day-to-day, and the academic. And so that has required us from the very beginning, long before we even had our graduate program, when we decided to move away from a traditional teacher preparation, state approved teacher certification program, into at the undergraduate level, a program kind of dedicated to classical education. The first thing that we did was we reached out to our partner schools, to say, what kind of graduates do you need? What kind of educators do you need? Inform us so that we are not, kind of led astray or go down a rabbit hole or follow leads that are not attentive to the work that you're doing. And so, that was, about 15 years ago. And ever since that time, we've been really good at reminding each other here at Hillsdale that we have this dual role. We have the academic, that Ben, kind of talked about, of connecting to the trivium, or to the tradition, so that we're led, by great ideas and by the tradition, but at the same time aware of the immediacy of the work that needs to be done. And I think that that's what makes our college special, and I hope our education department as well, is that we kind of straddle these two worlds.
Yeah. I was reminded, Dan, just getting ready for this conversation, that you'd written this up now, 14 years ago. And as you say, it was probably about 15 when the decision was made. But this I found in the archive of the National Association of Scholars, of which I'm sure you've been a member. And you told the story of how Hillsdale ended its teacher certification program to do just as you said, to really double down on, or to refine and clarify what education was going to be like at Hillsdale. That combination of the tradition and the practice. Not that you were getting away from preparation of teachers, but that it was going to be of a different type. It was not going to be the typical department, the typical education establishment. I would really be interested if both of you could maybe comment on how Hillsdale has approached that distinguishing, that sort of characterizing education, not in the status quo, but in the more traditional classical liberal arts approach. What are, 2 or 3 of the things that everyone in our audience needs to know set this form apart from what you might find if you go to Michigan State, for example? Sorry, Dan. Dan's alma mater there. That was a kind of a
Dan, I think you're obliged to respond to that one.
No, it's absolutely true. And let me just say this: we realize that Hillsdale is a special place in this way, in that we are an old institution, almost 200 years old, and so we've been around for a long time. So we're able to reach back to a tradition, and in order to commit yourself to the kind of education that we are committed to, you also have to have people in place who are committed to that tradition as well.
Sure.
And I know that there are people with other institutions of higher learning who want to do a similar kinds of thing, that we're trying to do here at Hillsdale, but there may not be an agreement upon what even the definition of education is, and what education should be. And so, I look back at the last 15 to 20 years with just gratitude, the providence of God, that all of the people who were here and in place, that allowed us to commit to this. And again, I just want to point out that I think there are other institutions out there that could do this and are able to do this, but I think for the most part, just even institutional politics and institutional divisions make it very, very difficult to do the kind of thing that we were able to do here at Hillsdale, just because the commitments might be different, the people and their commitments to a different kind of education. And so, it's very easy to say, well, you can do what we did, but that oftentimes is not the case, just because of the structures,
Sure.
And the ideas and the people who are in place. So,
and by the way, I want to comment. You've alluded to this. I think you even may have mentioned it, but both Dan and I think Ben, you may have contributed. I may have missed a contribution you made to the new journal that exists to support classical education, Principia, which again is free and available online. Dan and I have both been editors now for a few years, with 3 annual issues that have come out. And I'm really excited about this because it represents another piece of the emerging field or subfield, right? Education, carved out, dedicated to exploring how the liberal arts really do take shape and manifest in practice at K-12, but right on through undergraduate programs and graduate programs like your own. I think one of the things that I'm most intrigued by in terms of this journal, Principia, is the fact that we have made a space, we're sort of carving out a space to encourage scholarship that could come from both sides, could come from this entire ecosystem, K to 20, as I sometimes say, such that scholars can contribute, but so can practitioners who have some of the scholarly apparatus and understand how to make that contribution. There's real value there. So I'd really be interested to hear from both of you where you think that next line of research, again, be it a practical, almost of a practical nature coming out of classroom experience, or, as you've mentioned rightly, Ben, in exploring the tradition, or maybe understanding more the philosophical foundations. Where do you think we could use in this journal, Principia, or in the work you're doing at Hillsdale, even more dedicated time of dedicated moments for scholarship and reflection on the advancement of classical education?
Well, I mean, you're going to get an awfully myopic answer. I'm not sure if this is what we need, but this is what I personally want to know.
Okay.
I alluded a little bit earlier to sort of further research into, I don't know how I characterize it, the theoretical and the historical, or something like that. And it seems to me that the way that this contemporary movement has had its genesis, it's been a lot of folks, myself included, who know some great works and use them as touchstones, but it's almost always been ahistorical, right? It's just sort of like there's this vision of education in, say, Plato's Republic, and what there is, wise and sapient, and we can, carry out into this contemporary movement or contemporary practice. And I think that's been immensely fruitful and something that we ought to continue to do. But to my way of thinking, something to bring alongside of that is research on the actual history of educational practice. That's sort of, Plato had that great vision, but what was Quintilian actually doing in the Roman Empire? And that's kind of holding those two things together, and I think sometimes the theory and the practice, there's a certain tension between the two. I'd really like our present practices to be informed not just by deep theory, but also by the history of the past.
Mm-hmm.
Rob, if I could jump in here, I want to give you and others who are committed to classical education just a quick snippet that will point to a moment of hope. Just in the last couple of days, I had a graduate student email me, and this was totally student initiated. We, as my colleague says, we do a lot of deep reading and classic text. We marinate our students in that world. But this student emailed me and said, you know what, I want to get a student reading group together, and I want us to read Principia one article at a time and just have a reading group on our own. And here at Hillsdale, we put things in place at a programmatic level. We want to create traditions. Our grad program is relatively new, but we tell the students early on, we want them to create. And I usually say, as long as it's legal, we want you to create your own traditions as well. But never, did I dream, that a student would come and say, hey, there's a group of us who want to get into the literature beyond what we're learning in the class. That gives me great hope that they on their own have a great hunger to continue to do the research and the scholarship that, as you say, is required for this thing to continue.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great anecdote, Dan. I'm so glad you shared that. Please put me in touch with that grad student. I've got to sit in. I've got to remotely sit in, or I'll fly into Hillsdale. I've got to listen to that conversation. Just a fly on the wall, really.
Yeah.
You mentioned the program. You're in your fourth year now, or entering your fourth year, as I recall, in the graduate program. I'd really be interested in what you've learned from the first couple of cohorts. Kind of what you see by way of the needs, as well as the aspirations of these graduates as they pursue advanced study. Where's it headed, and what have you seen now?
Yeah. Thanks for that. We are in our fourth year, and we started out as a residential program. Our goal is to get between 15 and 20 students per year to come here to Hillsdale for 2 years to study with us in classes, but also to be in the Hillsdale community. There's a lot going on. We have athletics, we have dramatic performances. I think I told you earlier this week that we had the U.S. Secretary of Education on campus on Monday. There's just these wonderful opportunities that our students can have, and that has just been a great success. And as you say, we have now entered our fourth year. Last June, we launched our new program, which is, we call it a hybrid program, in that we bring students to campus, during the summer for a week of kind of an intensive boot camp experience, as it were. And then they take the remaining courses online. And that, we always had that program in mind because we wanted to reach educators who couldn't just leave their lives and come here to Hillsdale, although that's ideal. We know, that there are other classical educators doing great work in schools, and so we wanted to reach them as well. And so we've started that program, and that's off and running, and we're already recruiting our students for each of those programs, for the coming year. Our application opened August the 15th, and throughout the fall, we'll be recruiting and reviewing applications, and hopefully have our next 2 cohorts in place by the middle of spring. I wanted to mention one word that you mentioned and I just mentioned as well. A key component to our success is the word cohort. We believed in the idea in the abstract of we only have one entry point during the year. In other words, we don't bring students in the fall, in the spring, in the summer. We bring them in one entry point. And we believed that bringing people together as a cohort and having them go through our programs as a cohort would be a good idea, but we didn't really have a lot of concrete evidence of that. It just felt right. After 4 years, let me just tell you, it has been successful beyond our wildest dreams. in that the students really bond, together. At least in our residential program, they take all of their classes together as a cohort. In the second year, they can choose electives. And I've actually had students come to me and say, it's odd taking a class where not all of us are taking it together. And I think that's just proof that, that the cohort model, if you can do it in a graduate school, is the way to go. And we've even seen our students who have graduated from our program continue those conversations. And again, I think that speaks well to the movement at large as well.
Yeah, there's something powerful about the esprit de corps that you have formed, and that has formed in some sense because you brought them together, just as you described that earlier anecdote. They take it and run with it, right? It really infects the entirety of their experience.
That's right.
Ben, as you chair the education department, again, in the form that you received and inherited from Dan, but with a focus on classical, I'm really interested in where Hillsdale's headed, because between the Barney Initiative that supports K-12 schools, and I know many of you are faculty who support summer sessions and training of teachers that come to Hillsdale, I'd really be interested to understand how the undergraduate program alongside of the graduate program is moving forward. Where are your goals and ambitions for education now that you can see the growth, you recognize the need? How are you going to address that there at Hillsdale?
Yeah, it's a great question. So we're, certainly trying to meet the moment and take this, growing body of undergraduate students who are interested and get them excited of what we're doing, aware of what we're doing earlier in their time in college, because one of our challenges is, the senior who comes, partway through the fall to my office and says, "Oh, I've realized I want to teach, and there's no way that I can complete the classical education minor." So then I try to describe the minor within the minor that would be better than nothing. But I think part of it, and part of this story is Hillsdale's starting to have more and more undergraduate students who received classical educations, so that they actually know what it is at a earlier stage, and they're excited, many of them, to actually go back into communities from which they've come. And so we're trying to stitch that together, where we can give students this robust experience where they're going to have classes that cover all 7 liberal arts, philosophy of education, have an experience observing K-12 classrooms and learning some of the nuts and bolts of the practicals, lesson planning, and other practices, and then have the opportunity to take a couple of electives that can be either very, very heady or very, very practical. And we think that's an ideal preparation, because in some way you'll never be prepared for that first year of teaching. I think we all know, but that's a real theoretical and practical beginning to jump out and apprentice in as an actual first year teacher. So that's what we'd like to see.
So it sounds as though there's even on the ground at the college a kind of broadcast or advertisement, as it were, for education, for classical ed, so that you're recruiting as early as possible. And I think that's really important, right? God bless the senior, and maybe he or she will end up in a classical school, but far better, right, to have the sophomore and junior say, I'm beginning to detect a vocation, and anything you can do to help them through that process would be of great value, to be sure. I want to conclude with a kind of a twofold question. At Classical Commons, we're here to serve the needs of leaders, teachers, and even the parents, the other supporters in this ecosystem of K-12 classical. I'm really interested in what programming exists at Hillsdale. You've been making a fine case for everything you're doing right now, both at the undergraduate and graduate level. So that's clear. And we'll encourage folks to consider that and show them where they can find your programs online. But I'm interested in any programs that some of our audience might be able to partake of at a distance. Anything that you would recommend? And the second part of this question would be any advice that you have on how to go deeper in these traditions that we've been discussing. So tell me if there are specific programs at Hillsdale that our listeners and viewers could look into, and then just broad advice that you would give them for those who are interested in classical.
Yeah, so the advantage of being at a place like Hillsdale is that Hillsdale has a very strong outward focus. I mean, we're a relatively small undergraduate institution of about 1,500 students, and that size allows us to stay on mission and to hire the kinds of people that we need in order to do the work at the undergraduate level. But what's great about Hillsdale and our president, Dr. Arnn, he has a vision well beyond just the undergraduate experience. And so our graduate programs, not just in classical education, but also in a statesmanship, we have a DC campus. Those are outward facing efforts to kind of to help educate beyond just the undergraduate experience. And so we're really grateful to have strong graduate programs. We of course have our online programs, which a lot of people around the country are aware of. They're available for free. There's a wide variety of them. They're done very, very well. They're taught by Hillsdale faculty, drawing from the courses that they teach here at the institution. So the online courses have been a huge success. And of course, specifically for classical K-12 education, we have our K-12 office, which is working with local citizens to try to open up quality classical schools. And that office is involved in teaching people how to open up schools, how to cultivate leaders, how to work with teachers. They're preparing curricula for schools as well. It's a large effort. We have our initiative started probably about 15 years ago, working primarily in a charter school context, but we've expanded to work with private schools as well. And I would be remiss if I didn't point out that on our campus we have Hillsdale Academy, which is the Beier family and the Coupland family have really benefited personally by having that school here on campus. But if you want to see what our ideas at the college look like in a classroom, I would strongly encourage you to make your way to little old Hillsdale and take a look at the good work that our colleagues are doing on a daily basis to educate young people in this tradition. So we are doing a lot. It's one of the benefits of working at a place like Hillsdale in that we're doing a lot of the work involved, not just one narrow area.
So true, so true. And we will encourage our listeners and viewers to check it out online, and if possible, fly into Detroit, as I recall, get the rental car in 45, 50 minutes. What do you say?
A little higher.
Bit more. Hey, but it's a beautiful drive. It's a beautiful drive. All right.
Is.
Hey, Ben, do you have any advice for our audience, just again, in terms of how we go deeper?
Yeah, I mean, I think Dan has already really cataloged, a lot of the opportunities. I mean, he didn't say, for instance, that he's the instructor of one of those excellent online courses in children's literature. And maybe also worth mentioning is talking about the K-12 initiative and their work is they just produce lots of materials of different media that you can access, and even have opportunities in hotel grand ballrooms around the country for teachers to come and hear speakers through a certain program. So there's just keep digging and you'll find more and more goodies
that's right.
Along the lines of what Dan was describing. To go deeper, I mean, the first advice is just begin. Carve out a little bit of time, make a habit. I love a little book called The Intellectual Life that was written to try to instruct people who weren't in the ivory tower how to just make a little space to make learning a part of one's life, and that sort of idea has been taken up by so many others. James V. Shaw comes to mind, and his another sort of learning. So, right, anything can lead to everything. So, what interests you? Is it Plato, or is it this or that? Just just grab something and start. But to kind of bring your two parts of your question together, if somebody's looking to go deeper about some of these matters, I just want to speak in favor of all my colleagues in the education department, because we really make an effort to not just write, scholarly articles that are read by 5 people and our own grandmothers, but we really, we're out there doing professional development in schools and talking to teachers and to wider audiences, and that's led to publications that I think are of interest and accessible. So, play around on the education department webpage and pursue some of those writings of some of my colleagues would be a great place to begin.
I've been personally blessed and had opportunity both with Dan and other of your colleagues there at Hillsdale to see them in action, right? Working with a room of teachers at a conference or an event. And it really is remarkable. You've got quite an extraordinary community there. And we're so thankful for your continued support of classical education. Dan, Ben, just thanks for the time. I know you're busy. I mean, you've got classes to teach and you've got programs to administer, and you're spending an hour with Rob Jackson at Classical Commons. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
I really appreciate it.
Join us weekly on the Classical Commons podcast for updates on this renaissance in classical liberal arts education. And be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and our newsletter, and we'll keep you informed on everything that's happening across the spectrum.